The day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life turned into something I still couldn't believe, even now. I could still feel the weight of my wedding dress, heavy and perfect, and hear the quiet shock in the voices of our guests. But the image I could never forget was Zachary, my fiancé, walking away, his back to me, moving faster with each step down the aisle until he ran out of the church and disappeared through the wide wooden doors. Everything had started like a fairy tale. The little church of Santa Clare was glowing with white lilies, my favorite flower, filling the air with a soft, sweet scent. The afternoon sun lit up the stained glass windows, painting golden patterns across the floor as if blessing the moment. My father stood by my side, holding back tears as he walked me forward. I could see the emotion in his eyes as he placed my hand in Zachary's. Zachary smiled at me, warm, familiar, and for a second I believed in everything we had promised each other. The ceremony began. The priest's voice echoed gently through the church, and my heart beat fast with joy. I had imagined this moment since I was a little girl, and everything had gone exactly as I dreamed. The dress fit perfectly. The bouquet trembled slightly in my hands, and I thought it was because of happiness. Then the priest paused right before the vows, his eyes moving over the crowd. His voice shifted into something more serious. "There is someone here with a hidden truth," he said. "A secret that must be revealed before this union can happen." For a long, frozen moment nothing happened. The silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. Then I felt Zachary's hand loosen in mine. I turned to look at him. His face had gone white. His usual calm, his confident smile were gone. "Zachary," I whispered. But he didn't answer. He stepped back, once, twice, and then suddenly, without a word, he turned and ran. I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching the man I was supposed to marry vanish. I could still hear the echo of his footsteps as the church filled with soft gasps and whispers. My maid of honor, Diana, rushed to me, catching my arm as my legs began to shake. "Where is he going?" I asked, though it wasn't really a question. Nobody had the answer. The priest stayed silent. His face looked full of sympathy, but it only made things worse. My mother rushed up to the altar, but I barely heard her. Everything sounded far away, like I was underwater. Diana helped me into the small preparation room at the back of the church. Just hours earlier, I had stood in front of the mirror there, smiling and nervous, full of hope. Now I looked at my reflection and saw someone else. Someone lost. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Diana shook her head. "I don't know. But we'll find out." Just then my father walked in. He looked angry, the calmness he usually carried completely gone. "Violet," he said, gently but firmly. "The car is waiting. Let's go home." I didn't speak. I let Diana help me up, and together we walked out through a side door. I could feel the stares, hear the whispers, even though I didn't see any of it. Only one question ran through my head again and again. What could make a man run away like that on his wedding day? The ride home felt endless. I sat in the back seat in silence, still in my wedding dress. Diana held my hand. My father drove with tight lips, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror once or twice. My mother stayed behind to handle the guests and cancel the reception. When we got home, I sank into the living room sofa like all the energy had been drained from my body. The wedding dress, once something beautiful, now felt like a costume from a nightmare. Diana carefully removed my veil and started unpinning my hair. That's when my phone started to ring. She had been holding it for me during the ceremony. The screen showed missed calls. Messages. All from Zachary. My heart jumped. My hand reached for the phone, but before I could take it, my father stepped forward and took it from me. "No, Violet," he said quietly but firmly. "Not now. He lost the right to speak to you the moment he ran out of that church. I wanted to fight him for it. I wanted answers. I wanted to scream. But deep down I knew he was right. I wasn't ready. Not yet." Diana made tea and helped me change into something comfortable. Meanwhile, I could hear my father speaking angrily on the phone out on the porch. I didn't know who he was calling Zachary. His parents. I couldn't even ask. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Friends and relatives dropped by, offering kind words, but no one had any real explanation. The priest called, asking if he could see me the next day. His voice made me feel uneasy. By nightfall, my mother finally returned home. Her face looked tired, but there was something else, something like hesitation. Mom sat up. What is it? What did you find out? She looked at my father, then sat down next to me and took my hands. I spoke with Zachary's mother, she said carefully. After everyone left the church. My chest tightened. And she told me, Zachary has been in contact with someone. An ex-girlfriend. Her name is Lillian. That name hit me like a slap. Lillian. Of course I remembered her. Zachary had mentioned her before. Someone from college long in the past. Yes, I said slowly. But they broke up before we ever met. What does she have to do with this? My mother's grip on my hands tightened. She's pregnant, Violet. 3 months along. And just like that, everything inside me stopped. 3 months. The same time we started finalizing the wedding plans. The same time Zachary began acting strangely. Saying he was stressed, that work was demanding, that we needed to move the wedding date up for convenience. No, I whispered, shaking my head. That can't be true. But my mother wasn't done. Lillian contacted the church early that morning. She didn't want the wedding to go on without you knowing the truth. That's how the priest found out. The room tilted. Diana rushed to bring me a glass of water, but I could barely lift it. My mind started connecting the dots. The last-minute business trips. His sudden urgency. The distant looks. The way he held me at night but felt miles away. He's a coward, I said through clenched teeth. He couldn't even tell me himself. He let me stand there like a fool. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Zachary. It was an unknown number. Before anyone could stop me, I answered. Hello. A soft, nervous voice replied. Is this Violet? Yes. This is Lillian. Silence. Cold, sharp silence. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, she continued quickly. But please don't hang up. I need to tell you the truth. Not just about the pregnancy. About everything. I looked around the room. My parents and Diana were watching me, anxious. I nodded slowly. I'm listening. And then she told me. Everything. They never truly broke up. Even while Zachary was dating me, he was still seeing her. Secretly, quietly. At first it was just friendship. But it became more. She told me he had a pattern. Sick routine. He looked for women who were independent, successful, stable, but emotionally exposed. Women like her. Women like me. He gains your trust, she said. Makes you feel safe. Makes you feel special. And then he starts suggesting ways to secure your future. He gets you to combine finances, make investments through him, little by little. My hand trembled as I grabbed a pen and paper, writing every word. He did it to me, Lillian said. Then to another woman before me. And you were next. My throat tightened. How do you know all this? Why should I believe you now? I work at the bank where he keeps his accounts. 3 months ago I saw irregularities. He was still active, still running his scams. And that's when I found out about you. She told me about the suspicious transfers. The ghost accounts. The forged documents. Violet, he planned to move most of your money after the wedding. He prepared fake power of attorney documents, some with forged signatures. I don't know how far he got. I looked across the room at my desk. That's where he always said, "Let me help with your paperwork, love. I know it's boring stuff." I had trusted him with everything. Why are you telling me this now? Yes. Because I'm scared, Lillian said. Her voice cracked. When I confronted him, he threatened me. Said nobody would believe me. Pressured me to get an abortion. Said you and the wedding were too important. I realized he'd never stop unless someone stopped him. She hesitated. then said something that made my skin crawl. He doesn't even work where he says he does. That consulting firm. Fake. He uses it to cover the money he steals. My father, who was listening on speaker, exploded. I'm calling the police. No, Lillian cried. Not yet. He's careful. He has people, connections. If we act too soon, he'll erase everything. My head was spinning. Zachary, the man I was supposed to marry, was a professional con artist. What do we do? He asked. I've kept everything, Lillian said. Bank records, conversations, even recordings. We can meet tomorrow. But Violet, you need to be ready. What you'll see, it's worse than you think. I hung up and looked at my family. Their faces were as stunned as mine. But something else stirred inside me now. Not just shock, not just sadness, anger, and a fire that hadn't been there before. Diana leaned forward and gently squeezed my hand. What are you going to do? I stood slowly, feeling something shift in me. First, I said, I'm going to find out exactly who I was about to marry. Then I looked toward my desk, toward the documents, toward the lies. And then I'm going to make sure he never does this to anyone else again. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I stayed up going through every file, every document Zachary had ever touched. Things that once looked like small, helpful gestures now felt like traps. He had filled out forms for my convenience, created joint accounts to make things easier, even recommended I move some savings into investments he'd personally manage. It was all part of a bigger game, and I had been nothing more than his next move. The next morning I met Lillian at a small cafe in the downtown area. Diana insisted on coming with me, and my father, even more protective than before, parked across the street and waited in the car. I arrived early and picked a table in the back, where I could see every entrance and exit. When Lillian walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The confident woman from old photos Zachary once showed me was gone. In her place was someone tired, wary, but strong in a quiet way. Her pregnancy barely showed under her blazer. She clutched a thick folder in her hands. Thank you for coming, she said as she sat down. Her eyes drifted toward Diana. She's my best friend, I said. You can trust her. Lillian nodded and placed the folder on the table. Before we start, I want you to know, this isn't just about money. Zachary ruins people. He doesn't just steal. He breaks you down piece by piece. She opened the folder and laid out document after document. Bank statements, fake contracts, photographs, and even newspaper clippings. This is Camila, she said, pointing to a picture of a stylish middle-aged woman. He met her just after her divorce. Promised to help her rebuild. In 18 months, she lost over $2 million. I stared at the photo. What happened to her? She had to sell her house, start over, and she never reported it. He convinced her she'd signed everything willingly. She blamed herself. Lillian showed me more names. Eleanor, Claire, each one a victim with a nearly identical story. Diana, flipping through the papers, pointed to some familiar patterns. These transfers, she said. They match what he suggested for you, Violet. And she was right. The investment plan Zachary had presented to me before the wedding was almost a copy-paste from the ones he gave these women. How does he get away with it? I asked, overwhelmed. Doesn't anyone suspect anything? He has a whole system, Lillian said. Fake companies, legal-looking documents, and, most importantly, he targets women who seem strong on the outside but are dealing with something private. A breakup, grief, pressure. Something he can use. He paused. Her hand rested on her stomach. At first I thought he was just bad with money. But the more I looked, the more I found. When I finally confronted him, he changed. He threatened me. My job. My family. That's when I went to the priest. He's been my spiritual advisor for years. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't let the wedding happen. I was quiet for a long moment, then asked, You said you have access to his bank records? Yes. Through the bank. And are these copies? Or do you still have the originals? I have everything, she said. In multiple locations. I recorded him. He talks when he drinks. I started recording everything once I realized who he really was. Diana leaned forward, her eyes sharp. Violet, what are you thinking? I felt something settle in me, clarity. I'm thinking we don't just report him. We catch him in the act. On our terms. Lillian's eyes widened. You want to trap him? He nodded. He thinks I'm broken. That I'll believe anything he says right now. That gives us the perfect chance. We act like I'm still confused. Still in love. Meanwhile you keep watching his accounts. Abigail, I had already decided we needed a legal expert. Can help us organize everything. And when he makes his move, we'll be ready. Lillian opened her bag and handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Transactions. Timelines. Even people he's worked with. I held it carefully like it was gold. Because in a way it was. Let's use it, I said. Not just to stop him. To bring down the whole web. It's dangerous, Lillian warned. He has people. More dangerous than doing nothing. Yes. Letting him do this again. He made one mistake. What's that? Diana asked. He underestimated women with nothing left to lose. As we walked back to the car, something in me had changed. The woman who had been abandoned at the altar was gone. I had a new mission now. And Zachary would never see it coming. Back home, my living room turned into something that looked like a detective's workspace. Papers were pinned across the walls. Diagrams, timelines, account numbers, and names were connected with lines drawn in different colors. Diana joked that it looked like a scene from a crime movie, but every detail mattered. Every connection made Zachary's game clearer, and gave us more ways to beat him at it. We brought in Abigail, a lawyer who specialized in financial crimes and was a friend of Lillian's. From the moment she saw the documents, she took things seriously. First, she said, we protect your assets. All of them. If he's still trying to access any of your accounts, we make sure he can't get close. Within days, with Abigail's help, I moved my savings and investments into newly created accounts under legal structures he wouldn't recognize. Lillian used her contacts at the bank to monitor his activities discreetly. He's restless, she reported a few days later. He tried to log in to 2 joint accounts. We blocked them in time. But he's getting nervous. Zachary, meanwhile, flooded me with messages. Some were emotional. Asterisk, I miss you. Messed up. Let's fix this. Asterisk, others were practical. Asterisk, I think we need to talk about securing your finances. Asterisk. I replied just enough to keep him engaged. Never more than a line or two. Each message I sent was carefully planned. Each response of his was documented and added to our file. One afternoon, I showed Diana a message he had just sent. Asterisk, I think we should meet, Violet. Talk face to face. You deserve to hear my side. Asterisk. Diana looked up from her notes, a slow smile forming. That's it. Let's give him exactly what he wants. We set the trap. A dinner. Usual. Safe setting. Public place. I told him I wanted to talk, that I was hurt but open to listening. His reply came fast. Asterisk, thank you, my love. You won't regret this. Asterisk. I barely resisted the urge to scream. Before the dinner, we took the plan a step further. He's pushing for financial control again, I told the group during one of our strategy meetings. What if we give him something bigger than my savings? Something that looks better. You mean a fake company? Abigail asked, catching on quickly. Yes, I nodded. Something he can't resist. Camila, who had real estate experience, helped build a detailed backstory for a fake construction company, one that looked like it was about to receive major funding. Lillian made sure the bank records looked real. Abigail handled the legal side. Everything was crafted to look clean, attractive, and rich with opportunity. A week later, I accidentally mentioned it during our dinner. We've been preparing to launch a new expansion, I said, sipping my drink and watching his eyes closely. But to be honest, I feel overwhelmed managing all the capital. His smile grew instantly. Violet, why didn't you tell me earlier? Can help. This is exactly the kind of opportunity I've been hoping for. He leaned in. I have contacts. Real ones. We can multiply that money safely. I just need to see the project details. You know I've always wanted to support you. I don't know, Zachary, I said softly. After everything, I'm scared. He reached across the table and touched my hand. Let me prove I love you by helping you. We agreed to meet the next week to go over the company's investment strategy. As soon as I got home, I handed Abigail the recorder I'd hidden in my purse. She plugged it in, listened, then smiled. He didn't even hesitate. We have him trying to initiate a scam again. But it got better. Lillian, watching the bank systems, had more news. He's already moving money around. Small test. Using the same dormant accounts he's used before. He's preparing to strike. Then he'll bring in his godfather, I said, flipping through the printed documents. He won't do something big without Patrick Johnson covering it legally. Perfect, Abigail said. Because that's exactly what we want him to do. Everything was in motion. We had recordings, financial trails, victim statements, and now, our final bait. Zachary thought he had won me over again. He believed I was still heartbroken and easy to fool. But this time he was walking straight into our hands. One evening, while I organized the files for our next meeting, a message popped up on my phone. Asterisk, I can't wait to help you with this project, my love. Trust me. You won't regret it. Asterisk. I stared at the screen and smiled coldly. No, Zachary. You're the one who's going to regret it. And soon Patrick Johnson's office was on the top floor of a tall glass building in the financial district. Everything about the place screamed success. Polished marble floors, fresh flowers in the lobby, a receptionist who barely blinked as she led me to the conference room. But none of that impressed me. I wasn't here to admire his empire. I was here to watch it crumble. I rode the elevator with a calm face and a storm in my chest. Hidden under my blouse was a tiny microphone. Diana and Abigail were stationed in the cafe on the ground floor, keeping watch. Lillian was back at the bank, ready to track any sudden financial activity. When the elevator doors opened, Zachary was already waiting. Impeccable as always in his navy suit and expensive watch. His usual smug smile fixed on his face. My love, he said, walking toward me, reaching in for a kiss. I turned my head, letting it land on my cheek. He didn't seem to notice. You won't regret being here, he said as he guided me inside. Patrick is really excited to meet you. Officially. That word made me pause. Officially. Like he was trying to turn something fake into something real with charm and confidence. The conference room had a full glass view of the city skyline. Patrick Johnson stood as we walked in. He was older than I expected, sharp-eyed, with a calm, powerful presence. Violet, he said, extending his hand. We finally meet. Zachary speaks very highly of you. I shook his hand and smiled. It's good to finally meet Zachary's godfather. We sat. For nearly an hour I listened to Patrick's pitch, a well-rehearsed performance about asset protection, offshore holdings, and exclusive investment strategies. Everything sounded smart, clean, and professional. If I hadn't known better, I might have been impressed. But every word only reminded me of the pain he'd helped Zachary cause. Finally, Patrick slid a folder across the table. So, he said, what do you think of our proposal? I opened it slowly, pretending to review the pages I already knew too well. These were the same lies he and Zachary had sold to every other victim, just polished, renamed, and recycled. It looks interesting, I said. But I do have a few concerns. Perfectly normal, Zachary jumped in. Patrick is the best in the business. He'll make everything crystal clear. I pulled out my tablet and tapped the screen. Great. Because I was hoping you could explain how this exact structure was used to ruin the lives of several women. The smile on Zachary's face cracked. Patrick's fingers stiffened around the pen in his hand. I'm sorry, Zachary said, trying to laugh it off. What are you talking about? Camila Brown, I said, placing her photo on the table. You bled her dry in 2019. Another photo. Eleanor Davis. 2020. Same structure, same pattern. Another. Claire Wilson. 2021. And of course Lillian. You remember her, don't you? Zachary stood up, his chair screeching behind him. This is ridiculous. You don't know what you're saying. Actually, I said calmly, I know exactly what I'm saying. I pulled a USB drive from my bag and placed it next to the stack of evidence. Bank records, forged documents, recorded calls. All of it. Patrick leaned back, his face no longer composed. You're confused, Violet, he said slowly, carefully. These are serious accusations. And they come with serious proof, I replied. Just then, the conference room door opened. Abigail stepped in, followed by two plainclothes officers and a prosecutor we'd been working with for weeks. Gentlemen, Abigail said smoothly, placing her briefcase on the table. I believe we all have a lot to discuss. The room erupted into motion. Zachary tried to run. One of the officers stopped him before he reached the hallway. Patrick stayed seated, muttering threats under his breath. Every one of them picked up by the microphone still hidden in my blouse. You can't prove anything, Zachary shouted as he was cuffed. It's your word against ours. No, I said, rising from my chair. It's my word, plus this recording, plus financial records, plus every woman you left behind. You picked the wrong bride to scam. I watched as they led him away, flailing and furious. Later that day, we met in Abigail's office. Lillian brought the final batch of track transactions. The men had tried to erase trails that morning, but she'd already saved everything. We did it, Diana whispered, hugging me tight. No, I said, my voice full of something new. We did it. Camila, who had come in to witness the end of this long chapter, had tears in her eyes. I never thought I'd see justice, she said. But today, I did. And more is coming, Abigail added, checking her phone. More victims are coming forward. The news of their arrest is spreading fast. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, staring at the wedding album I never finished. The pictures that used to haunt me now felt like a relic from another life. That dress in my closet, once a symbol of betrayal, had become something else. Proof that sometimes you have to lose everything to find your strength. My phone buzzed. It was Lillian. They're going away for a long time, she said, her voice shaking. The prosecutor said it's enough to shut the whole network down. And how are you? Asked. She laughed softly. For the first time in a long time. I'm okay. I hung up and looked out the window at the city below. A year ago, I was waiting to say, I do. Now I was part of something so much bigger, something that mattered. Something real. And the best part was, we were just getting started. The days after the arrests were filled with a quiet kind of satisfaction, not the loud, dramatic ending one might expect. It wasn't fireworks or applause. It was paperwork, follow-ups, and endless calls from other women. Women who had been fooled, manipulated, and used by men like Zachary. Some of them had never spoken up before. But now they had a reason to. Now they had a place to go. That place was the nonprofit we created, born from pain but built on power. At first it was just a small group. Me, Lillian, Diana, Camila, and Abigail. Sharing resources, helping each other recover. But it quickly grew. We began organizing seminars, support groups, legal counseling sessions. We offered financial education for women, teaching them how to spot red flags, protect their money, and never second-guess their gut again. Camila, who had once lost everything, was now one of our lead financial consultants. She had reinvested what little we'd recovered from Zachary's accounts into her career, and this time it had a purpose. Her voice carried weight. Her story gave others courage. "You won't believe this," she said one morning, walking into Lillian's backyard with her laptop and a huge smile. 3 more women reached out this week. Same scam, different names. But the pattern is identical. Diana, who had somehow become our event planner, looked up from the porch where she was slicing lemons for fresh lemonade. "Is next week's seminar confirmed?" "Absolutely," said Abigail, already checking her messages. "We're booked solid. And the community center just offered to give us space rent-free for future sessions." The garden smelled like summer. Cut grass, blooming roses, fresh citrus, and laughter filled the air. Harrison, Lillian's 4-month-old baby, lay in her arms, fast asleep with his little fists curled under his chin. It was hard to imagine that just a year ago she had been terrified, unsure if she would be safe, unsure if she would be believed. Now she looked peaceful, grounded, whole. Sometimes I still had to remind myself this was all real. "You know," I said, picking up Harrison gently so Lillian could stretch her legs, "the other day I found my wedding dress at the back of the closet." "You still have that thing?" Diana asked, wrinkling her nose. "Actually," I smiled, "I have a plan for it." "What kind of plan?" Camila asked, curious. "A transformation," I said. "I want to cut it up. Turn it into tiny baptism dresses for babies of single mothers. Like Harrison. Like others who may not have much but deserve something beautiful. Something made from a story like ours, but rewritten." Lillian's eyes filled with emotion. "That's beautiful," she said. "I'll help sew them. And we'll turn it into an event," added Abigail. "We'll deliver the dresses and speak about fraud prevention, offer resources, make it bigger than just a gesture." As they all excitedly talked through the details, I looked around and felt something rise in my chest. Not sadness, not even pride, but something warmer. Gratitude. Because what had started as a personal disaster had become a mission. Movement. Diana, always reading me like a book, came over and leaned beside me. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay," I said. "I was just thinking. Sometimes you lose something you thought you needed, only to find what you really needed instead." She smiled. "Like a team of battle-hardened women." "Exactly." Lillian joined us, gently rocking Harrison back and forth. "The same independence they targeted," she said, "was the strength that brought them down. And that strength," Abigail added, arriving with another lemonade, "is only growing." That moment my phone buzzed. It was an article link from a major newspaper. The headline made my breath catch. "How a group of women took down a national fraud network and launched a revolution." I showed the others. They gathered around me, reading over my shoulder. Camila laughed. "Seems like we're making the right people uncomfortable." "Good," Diana said. "Let them squirm." "That's just the beginning," Abigail added. "Every woman we help becomes another shield, another sword." The sun was setting behind the garden, casting a golden light over all of us. I raised my glass in a quiet toast. "To us." They lifted theirs in unison. "To us." I looked at these women, my friends, my sisters, and knew without a doubt that we had built something unbreakable. The priest who interrupted my wedding, the secret that had nearly broken me. It all felt like fate now. Without that moment, I never would have seen the truth. Never would have found these women. Never would have found myself. The wedding dress would never walk down the aisle. But it would walk into someone's life as hope. The tears I cried would never be wasted. They had watered something new, something stronger. And Zachary, he gave me the worst day of my life. But in doing so, he also gave me something else. The fire to rise, to fight, and to help others do the same. We still had more work to do. And we were just getting started. 1 year after that day in Patrick Johnson's office, the trial finally ended. The courtroom had been packed for weeks. Reporters, victims, lawyers, curious onlookers, all watching as the truth came out piece by piece. Zachary and his accomplices, including Patrick, were sentenced to long prison terms. The evidence was undeniable. And as more women stepped forward, the case grew far beyond what any of us had imagined. On a quiet Saturday morning, I found myself sitting in the backyard of Lillian's new home. It was warm and peaceful, and the world felt steady for the first time in a long time. Harrison, now a year old, was wobbling around the grass, his little legs finding balance with every step. He laughed, and it was the purest sound I'd heard in months. Sometimes I still had to remind myself it was all real. Lillian joined me on the bench, brushing back her hair, her face calm. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself," she said, "just to believe we really did it. We had. And not just the arrests or the trial. We had taken back our lives. We had rebuilt. Stronger. Smarter. Together." Diana came out from the kitchen with a pitcher of lemonade, her trademark move, and poured glasses for everyone. "You know what I was thinking," she said, settling beside us. "This all started because of a wedding that never happened. The most successful non-wedding in history." I laughed. "That should be our motto." Camila arrived next, her laptop under one arm and a folder full of notes in the other. She had been busier than all of us, now working full-time as a consultant for women trying to protect themselves from fraud. But she never missed our Saturdays. "You won't believe this," she said, dropping her bag on the table. "We just passed 100 cases. Women we've helped in the last 6 months alone." 100? Lillian asked, amazed. Camila nodded. "Some weren't even financial. Some were emotional manipulation. Others were legal traps. But the pattern's the same: power and control. We're changing that." It was hard to believe that our little support group had become a national nonprofit. That what began as 5 women sharing their pain had grown into something that helped thousands. We hosted workshops, taught classes, trained lawyers, and offered free advice. Abigail, now one of the most in-demand speakers in our circle, was already organizing our next tour. "This is what revenge looks like," she had once said. "Not fire. Not rage. But progress. Protection. Purpose." I looked down at Harrison, who had crawled into my lap and was tugging at my necklace with sticky fingers. He looked up and smiled, and something inside me melted. "You know," I said quietly, "when I think back to that day at the church, I used to feel shame, embarrassment. But now, all I feel is gratitude." Lillian nodded. "That moment set everything in motion. And saved so many more women than just us," added Diana. I glanced toward the house, where my wedding dress now hung in pieces, being carefully sewn into little garments by a team of volunteers. Dresses for children born to single mothers. New beginnings stitched from an old ending. That had been the idea, something symbolic. A reminder that what was once painful could become something beautiful. As the sun dipped lower, casting a soft orange glow across the yard, I picked up my glass. "To the priest who ruined my wedding," I said with a smirk. "To the best wedding crasher of all time," Diana replied, raising hers. "To the secret that saved us," Camila added. "To us," Lillian finished. We all clinked glasses. Because in the end, the story wasn't about Zachary. It wasn't even about the scam. It was about what came after. The strength we found. The voices we raised. The lives we changed. Zachary tried to destroy me. But all he did was reveal the fire that was already there. And together we turned that fire into something unstoppable. That was my real love story. The one I wrote for myself. The sun had nearly disappeared beyond the trees, leaving behind a golden sky and a soft breeze that rustled the leaves. We sat together in the fading light, quiet for a moment, each of us lost in our own thoughts. But there was peace now, something none of us had felt in a long time. I looked around at the women who had walked this path with me. Lillian, once terrified and trapped, now stood tall and sure, a mother and a warrior. Camila, once financially ruined, had become a pillar for others. Diana, always by my side, had turned her loyalty into leadership. Abigail, calm and sharp, was no longer just a lawyer. She was a protector. And me. I had started this journey with shaking hands, barely able to speak through the betrayal. Now I stood not just as someone who survived, but someone who changed the outcome not just for myself but for so many others. The notifications on my phone had become a constant background hum. New messages from women across the country. Stories like ours. Some still stuck. Some already healing. But all reaching out. Our organization had started a wave, and it was growing. One message in particular caught my eye. It was from a woman named Esther. She'd found out just days ago that her fiancé was stealing from her. She didn't know where to go or what to do. But she had read our story in the news, and it gave her the courage to speak. Asterisk, I need help. I don't want to be ashamed. I want to be free. Asterisk. I showed the message to the group. Lillian nodded. Let's call her tomorrow. We should bring her in, Abigail said, already mentally rearranging her schedule. Camila smiled. One more warrior. That was what we were now. A circle of warriors. Not victims. Not even survivors. We were women who refused to stay silent. Who turned every scar into a lesson. Every mistake into a mission. The garden lights came on one by one, casting a gentle glow around us. Harrison had fallen asleep again, tucked into his mother's arms. Diana stood and walked over to the sewing table, where a half-finished dress lay. Once a wedding gown, now soft cotton for a child who might never know where it came from. We should do this every year, she said suddenly. An event. Not just to give the dresses, but to tell our story. All of it. Yes, I said softly. Every year. So no one forgets how far we've come. And so we planned it, our first annual gathering. A ceremony not of pain, but of power. A reminder that sometimes, happy endings don't come with wedding bells or white veils. Sometimes they come in the shape of a new beginning. Of truth. Of community. As I packed up my things to head home, I glanced back one last time. The others were still sitting there, laughing now, talking about the future. No tension. No shadows. Just light. I stepped outside the gate and paused, breathing in the quiet. The girl who had once been left at the altar didn't exist anymore. In her place stood a woman who had faced the storm and built something beautiful from the wreckage. And that, I knew, was the greatest revenge of all. Not to destroy him, but to rebuild myself, and help others do the same. We weren't done. Not by a long shot. But we were ready. And we were just getting started.